computer. Thank you for your encouragement. So we'll say our blessing for studying Torah. And then if anybody else shows up, I'll let them in and we can start reading. I'll begin. We're at Genesis 20.
No, I don't know. On this sheet, it says 18:1. That's not.
18:1 sounds right to me.
Is it?
Yes, that's the start of Vayera.
That's beautiful, yeah.
And I'm going to be reading from
18:1.
This book, which is not my normal case. I'm usually reading from Richard Elliott Friedman, who's translates very literally and sometimes confusingly. So, Genesis, the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu
melech haolam
asher
asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav
v'tzivanu
anu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, God, for blessing us with the commandment to soak ourselves in Torah. The Lord appeared to him by the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. Looking up, he saw 3 men standing near him. As soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to greet them, and bowing to the ground, he said, "My lords, if it please you, do not go on past your servant. Let a little water be brought. Bathe your feet and recline under the tree. And let me fetch a morsel of bread that you may refresh yourselves. Then go on, seeing that you have come your servant's way." They replied, "Do as you have said." Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said, "Quick, 3 seahs of choice flour, knead and make cakes." Then Abraham ran to the herd, took a calf, tender and choice, and gave it to a servant boy who hastened to prepare it. He took curds and milk, and the calf had been prepared and set before them, and he waited on them under the tree as they ate. They said to him, "Where is your wife Sarah?" And he replied, "There in the tent." Then one said, "I will return to you next year, and your wife Sarah shall have a son." Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years. Sarah had stopped having the periods of women. And Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "Now that I am withered, and am I to have enjoyment with my husband so old?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh, saying, 'Shall I in truth bear a child, old as I am?' Is nothing too wondrous for the Lord? I will return to you at this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son." Sarah lied, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was frightened. But he replied, "You did laugh." Deborah, would you like to read, starting at verse 16?
Okay, thank you. The men set out from there and looked down towards Sodom, Abraham walking with them to see them off. Now Adonai had said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, since Abraham is to become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him? For I have singled him out, that he may instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of Adonai by doing what is just and right, in order that Adonai may bring about for Abraham what God has promised him." Then Adonai said, The outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grave. I will go down to see whether they have acted altogether according to the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will take note. The men went on from there to Sodom, while Abraham remained standing before Adonai. Abraham came forward and said, "Will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? What if there should be 50 innocent within the city? Will you then wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that innocent and guilty fare alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly?" And Adonai answered, "If I find within the city of Sodom 50 innocent ones, I will forgive the whole place for their sake." Abraham spoke up, saying, "Here I venture to speak to my Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. What if the 50 innocent should lack 5? Will you destroy the whole city for want of the 5? And God answered, "I will not destroy if I find 45 there." But he spoke to God again and said, "What if 40 should be found there?" And God answered, "I will not do it for the sake of 40. And he said, "Let not Adonai be angry if I go on. What if 30 should be found there?" And God answered, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." And he said, "I venture again to speak to you. What if 20 should be found there?" And God answered, "I will not destroy for the sake of the 20. And Abraham said, "Let not Adonai be angry if I speak but this last time. What if 10 should be found there?" And God answered, "I will not destroy for the sake of the 10. When Adonai had finished speaking to Abraham, departed, and Abraham returned to his place.
Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome.
Your name is Linda, correct?
Yes.
Just going by my very fallible memory. So would you like to read for
A bit.
15 verses or so?
Sure. Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Mhm.
Yes,
Okay. So the top of chapter 19,
correct.
the 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. And Lot saw and arose toward them, and he prostrated himself on his face to the ground. And he said, "Behold now, my lords, please turn to your servant's house and stay overnight and wash your feet, and you shall arise early and go on your way." And they said, "No, but we will stay overnight in the street." And he urged them strongly, and they turned into him and came into his house, and he made them a feast, and he baked unleavened cakes, and they ate. When they'd not yet
Yes.
Welcome, Jay. We're at chapter 19, verse 3,
Right.
4.
4.
Verse 4, yes. When they'd not yet retired, and the people of the city, the people of Sodom, surrounded the house, both young and old, the entire populace from every end of the city, and they called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us and let us be intimate with them." And Lot came out to them to the entrance, and he shut the door behind him, and he said, "My brethren, please do not do evil. Behold, now I have 2 daughters who were not intimate with a man. I will bring them out to you and do to them as you see fit. Only to these men do nothing, because they've come under the shadow of my roof." But they said, "Back away." And they said, "This one came to sojourn, and he is judging. Now we will deal even worse with you than with them." And they pressed hard upon the man Lot, and they drew near to break the door. And the men stretched forth their hands, and they brought Lot to them to the house, and they shut the door. And the men who were at the entrance of the house, they struck with blindness, both small and great, and they toiled in vain to find the entrance. And the men said to Lot, "Whom else do you have here? A son-in-law, your sons and your daughters? And whomever you have in the city, take out of the place, for we are destroying this place, because their cry has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." So Lot went forth and spoke to his sons-in-laws, the suitors of his daughters, and he said, "Arise, go forth from this place, for the Lord is destroying the city." But he seemed like a comedian in the eyes of his sons-in-law. And as the dawn rose, the angels pressed Lot, saying, "Get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you perish because of the iniquity of the city." But he tarried, and the men took hold of his hand and his wife's hand and the hand of his 2 daughters out of the Lord's pity for him, and they took him out and placed him outside the city.
Justin, would you like to continue?
I would.
Putting a lot of pressure on you.
And it came to pass when they took them outside, he said, "Flee for your life. Do not look behind you, and do not stand in the entire plain. Flee to the mountain, lest you perish." And Lot said to them, "Please do not, O Lord. Behold, now your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have increased your kindness, which you have done with me, to sustain my soul. But I cannot flee to the mountain, lest the evil overtake me, and I die. Behold, now this city is near to flee there, and it is small. Let me please flee there. Is it not small? And my soul will survive." And he said to him, "Behold, I have favored you also as regards to this matter, and that I will not overturn the city that you have mentioned. Hasten, flee there, for I am not able to do anything until you arrive there." Therefore he named the city Zoar. The sun came out upon the earth, and Lot came to Zoar, and the Lord caused to rain down upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord from heaven. And he turned over these cities and the entire plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities and the vegetation of the ground. And his wife looked at him, looked from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham arose early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord, and he looked over the face of Sodom and Gomorrah, and over the entire face of the land of the plain. And he saw, and behold, the smoke of the earth had risen like the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham, and he sent Lot out of the midst of the destruction, when he overturned the cities in which Lot had dwelt. And Lot went up from Zoar, and he dwelt on the mountain, and his 2 daughters were with him, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar, and so he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. That's 30. Do you want me to stop, or how would you?
Why don't you continue to the end of chapter 19?
Thank you. Thank you. And the elder said to the younger, "Our father's old. There's no man on earth to come upon us, as is the custom of all the earth. Come, let us give our father wine to drink, and let us lie with him, and let us bring to life seed from our father." And they gave their father wine to drink on that night, and the elder came and lay with her father, And he did not know of her lying down or of her rising up. And it came to pass on the morrow that the elder said to the younger, Behold, last night I lay with my father. Let us give him wine to drink tonight, too, and come, lie with him. Let us bring to life seed from our father. So they gave their father to drink on that night also. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know of her lying down or of her rising up. And Lot's 2 daughters conceived from their father. And the elder bore a son, and she named him Moab. He is the father of Moab until this day. And the younger, she too bore a son, and she named him Ben-Ami. He is the father of the children of Ammon until this day.
Thank you. Jay, are you able to read? You caught up?
20?
Yeah.
Sure. Abraham journeyed from there to the region of the Negev and settled between Karat of heaven. He annihilated those cities and the entire. Wait, am I going right? No.
No.
He and I between Kadesh and Shur. I was
Correct.
doing one. Yeah, sure. While he was sojourning in Gerar, Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, She is my sister. So King Abimelech of Gerar had Sarah brought to him. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, You are to die because of the woman that you have taken, for she is a married woman. Now Abimelech had not approached her. He said, O Lord, will you slay people even though innocent? He himself said to me, She is my sister. And she also said, He is my brother. When I did this, my heart was blameless and my hands were clean. And God said to him in the dream, I knew that you did this with a blameless heart. And so I kept you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her. Therefore, restore the man's wife. Since he is a prophet, he will intercede for you to save your life. If you fail to restore her, know that you shall die, you and all that are yours. Early next morning, Abimelech called his servants and told them all that had happened, and the men were greatly frightened. Then Abimelech summoned Abraham and said to him, What have you done to us? What wrong have I done that you should bring so great a guilt upon me and my kingdom? You have done to me things that ought not to be done. What then, Abimelech demanded of Abraham, was your purpose in doing this thing? I thought, said Abraham, surely there is no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. And besides, she is in truth my sister, my father's daughter, though not my mother's, and she became my wife. So when God made me wander from my father's house, I said to her, Let this be the kindness that you shall do to me, whatever place we come to, say there of me, He is my brother. Abimelech took sheep and oxen and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham, and he restored his wife Sarah to him. And Abimelech said, Here my land is before you. Settle wherever you please. And to Sarah he said, I herewith give your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. This will serve you as vindication before all who are with you, and you are cleared before everyone. Abraham then prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his slave girls, so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed fast every womb of the household of Abimelech because of Sarah, the wife of Abraham.
Okay, thank you. Susan, would you read chapter 21?
Yes, thank you.
you.
And the Lord singled out Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken. And Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the set time that God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised Isaac his son when he was 8 days old, as God had charged him. And Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac his son was born to him. And Sarah said, Laughter has God made me. Whoever hears will laugh at me. And she said, Who would have uttered to Abraham, Sarah is suckling sons? for I have borne a son in his old age. The child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing, and she said to Abraham, drive out this slave girl and her son, for the slave girl's son shall not inherit with my son, with Isaac. And the thing seemed evil in Abraham's eyes because of his son. And God said to Abraham, let it not seem evil in your eyes on account of the lad and on account of your slave girl. Whatever Sarah says to you, listen to her voice, for through Isaac shall your seed be acclaimed. But the slave girl's son too, I will make a nation, for he is your seed. And Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar, placing them on her shoulder. And he gave her the child and sent her away, and she went wandering through the wilderness of Beersheba. And when the water in the skin was gone, she flung the child under one of the bushes and went off and sat down at a distance, a bow shot away, for she thought, let me not see when the child dies. And she sat at a distance and raised her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad, and God's messenger called out from the heavens and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the lad's voice where he is. Rise, lift up the lad, and hold him by the hand, for a great nation will I make him. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin with water and gave to the lad to drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew up and dwelled in the wilderness, and he became a seasoned bowman. And he dwelled in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife from the land of Egypt. And it happened at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, captain of the troops with him, said to Abraham, saying, God is with you in whatever you do. Therefore, swear to me by God that you will not deal falsely with me and with my kith and kin. Like the kindness I have done you, so you shall do for me, and for the land in which you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I indeed will swear it. But Abraham upbraided Abimelech concerning the well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. And Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing, and you too have not told me, and I myself never heard of it till this day. And Abraham took sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them sealed a pact. And Abraham set apart 7 ewes of the flock, and Abimelech said to Abraham, what are these 7 ewes that you set apart? And he said, now the 7 ewes have dug this well. Therefore did he call the name of that place Beersheba, for there did the two of them swear. And they sealed a pact in Beersheba, and Abimelech arose, and Phicol, captain of his troops, with him. And they returned to the land of the Philistines, and Abraham planted a tamarisk at Beersheba, and he invoked there the name of the Lord, everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines many days.
Sometime afterward, God put Abraham to the test. He said to him, Abraham, and he answered, Hineni. And he said, take your son, your favored one, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the heights that I will point out to you. So early the next morning, Abraham saddled his ass and took with him 2 of the servants and his son Isaac. He split the wood for the burnt offering, and he set out for the place of which God had told him. And on the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his servants, you stay here with the ass. The boy and I will go up there. We will worship and we will return to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and put it on his son Isaac. He himself took the firestone and the knife, and the two walked off together. Then Isaac said to his father Abraham, Father. And he answered, Yes, my son. And he said, Here are the firestone and the wood, but where's the sheep for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, God will see to the sheep for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them walked on together. They arrived at the place of which God had told him. Abraham built an altar there, and he laid out the wood. He bound his son Isaac, and he laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham picked up the knife to slay his son. Then an angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. And he answered, Hineni. And he said, Do not raise your hand against the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your favored one, from me. When Abraham looked up, his eye fell upon a ram caught in the thicket by the horns. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering in place of his son. And Abraham named that place Adonai Yireh, whence the present saying, On the mount of the Lord there is a vision. The angel of God called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, By myself I swear, the Lord declares, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your favored one, I will bestow my blessing upon you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven and the sands of the seashore, and your descendants shall seize the gates of their foes. All the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your descendants, because you have obeyed my command. Abraham then returned to his servants, and they departed together for Beersheba. And Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Sometime later, Abraham was told, Milcah too has borne children to your brother Nahor. Uz, the firstborn, and Buz, his brother, and Kemuel, the father of Aram, and Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel being the father of Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Reumah, also bore children, Tebah, Gaham, Tahash, and Ma'akah. And that's the end of our Torah portion, which is packed full of disturbing stuff. So please take out the study sheet when we're done with when I'm done reading the study sheet. Please be ready with your comments, both about the study sheet or about all these.
Came in late. Can I ask why we have an exclusive club here? This is most delightful. I didn't. This is by invitation only. I feel blessed.
Well, we have passed one of the tests and have been selected to be among the elect.
Oh, the elect. I
Or
love
the select.
the select.
Yeah, as I think I mentioned,
It is delectable, yes.
I was really anxious that many of our esteemed fellow discussers would go to the wrong place.
And they may have.
But the wrong place doesn't work. Or they may have just been scared off by my name.
Okay.
Okay.
So go ahead, David.
Basta.
Asta.
Basta. Enough.
Asta tonight.
Go on.
So at the top of the study sheet is
Must speak. Isn't that enough? Must speak. Nobody knows Hebrew. Okay.
Not in Spanish.
Must speak is
Hebrew.
enough.
Must speak. Yeah. Anyway.
Ganug already.
Number one.
So I used the art piece from Rabbi's Tuesday email where he discusses it at some extent, but I'm reusing it in a different paradigm, a different way of looking at the world. But the art piece is an abstraction based on the mystical, intimate union with Rumi and Shams. I have selected a certain element in the many disturbing elements of our Torah portion, and I'll start with the first one, which quotes from Genesis 22, verse 2. And God said, "Take your son, your only one, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah, and make of him a burnt offering there on one of the mountains, which I will show you." Genesis Rabbah, the great midrash that's at least 1,500 years, if not more, old in our Jewish tradition, comments on it in that I'm not quoting because Rashi and then Jonathan Alter have
Jonathan Sacks.
and Jonathan Sacks, but especially Jonathan Alter, who's one of the translators that I love to read, have distilled the midrash in this way. And God said to Abraham, "Take your son." And Abraham said to God, "I have two sons." And God said to Abraham, "Your only one." And Abraham said, "There is an only one to his mother, and there is an only one to the other mother." And God said to him, "Whom you love." And Abraham said, "I love both of them." And God said, "Isaac." This very thought, whenever I read those verses, is God's talking about Isaac as if he were the only one, as if he was the only one that was loved, as if Abraham didn't care about Ishmael, but the Midrash says Abraham did care. And it then leaves you with the question of why is God pretending that there's only one? I mean, there's a lot of commentary on that. Mostly says something like, well, Isaac is going to carry the promise. Ishmael will get to be a nation, but Isaac's going to be our ancestor and carry the promise of being a light unto the nations and a blessing to everybody. So then my second comment is, in the Canaanite, pagan, Greek, Roman world that surrounded our ancestors, sons and daughters were the property of the parents or the father. And the parents can kill them or sacrifice them at their sole discretion. But the whole point of the Akedah was that when God's messenger said, "Hold your hand," the world was being told, your children belong to God. They're his or hers to determine whether they were sacrificed or not sacrificed. And that is to say, what our tradition says many times, that the purpose of the Akedah was to ban child sacrifice, which I've always found a puzzling teaching. but this is an explanation of it that made sense to me. And now we'll go to item 3. This is from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, who passed away. Until it was over, Abraham, I'm summarizing Dr. Sachs. Until it was over, Abraham did not know what to believe. Until the trip to the mountain was over, and he did not know how it was going to end. He believed that God who promised him a son who would father nations, carry the promise, was Isaac. And that God would not allow him to sacrifice the son that was going to father nations, but he could not see how that was going to turn out. He just believed that he was not going to doubt either the promise or the command, which appeared to totally contradict the promise. This is Rabbi Sachs, the test of the binding of Isaac was not about sacrifice. It was about obedience and faith under uncertainty. So you can relive Abraham's travel to Moriah as being one of being conflicted by uncertainty, but still full of a heartful connection with whatever spiritual center you have found in the universe. And then here is a last of the many, many different understandings of what the Akedah was about, but this one struck me strongly. Aish HaTorah's Rabbi Noson Weitz points out, we are required to serve God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our might. And might refers to your strength in the world, which you might even just call money or wealth. But heart refers to the good and evil inclination, the Yetzer HaTov and the Yetzer Hara. So serving it with both your evil impulse and your good impulse. You are required to serve God with your evil impulse. Abraham's test was whether he could find a way to use his Yetzer Hara, his evil inclination, to summon up that level of cruelty that is virtually impossible for most good people to be able to commit to sacrificing his son. The Rabbi Weitz is saying that in order to do this horrific order and be a good person, you have to be able to use your Yetzer Hara. I found that to be very, very startling. And then the last entry, number 5 on the back, is a poem by Rumi, which I dedicate to our Torah study group. Even though you're not equipped, keep searching. Equipment isn't necessary on the way to the sustainer. Whoever you see engaged in search, become her friend. Cast your head in front of her. For choosing to be a neighbor of seekers, you become yourself. protected by conquerors, you will yourself learn to conquer. If an ant seeks the rank of Suleiman, don't smile contemptuously upon its quest. Everything you possess of skill and wealth and handicraft, wasn't at first merely a thought and a quest? So I'm interested in anybody's strong reactions.
I'd like to offer at least something that's sticking with me this week, this time. I'm really aware of this kind of the first prayer. I think Rabbi Soloveitchik refers to this as the first prayer through Abraham after he's been circumcised. And the first prayer is a bargaining about the survival of Sodom and Gomorrah. And I mean, and so and this is really this two patriarchs, like between Abraham and now he's Abraham, now he's circumcised. We're referring to him as Abraham, but and also Moshe Rabbeinu, that they're both like they plead big time for the people. How, just, and I mean, bargaining God down. That's the first tefillah is like, it's like lowballing God. So, I mean, so just, just trying to kind of get that sense of that kind of bargaining or that kind of thing. So, I mean, and then I think that to go from that kind of, I mean, these are the great compassionate figures. Abraham is a great compassionate figure for Sodom and Gomorrah, as Moshe Rabbeinu is for the people of Israel. Then, to being the one who's laying the knife at his son's neck or abandoning his other son, I mean, but it's like either one or the other. It's like abandonment or child abuse. So I mean, to go from these compassionate fathers, I mean, I guess that may be part of it. I don't know whether there's an answer or whether it's just mystery. I mean, and that would be the part of the Rumi that's alluded to. And I think that Rabbi would, Moskowitz would really acknowledge the mystery of these different things all in the same parsha, the cruelty and this tremendous compassion for the most depraved city of all time. Wow.
Well, I look at them, that one in particular, the compassionate Abraham pulling a knife with the intent to use it on his son, who he had tied up, as being such an intense conflict that it's the equivalent of a Japanese koan, which is a conflict so intense your mind cannot reconcile it, cannot hold both of them in your head at the same time without some sort of rip in your feelings.
Right. Yeah.
But along the lines of that particular ripping conflict, in my preparation, I ran into a comment by Richard Elliott Friedman, who's not a rabbi, for he is, it's lately in his old age. But he pointed out that Abraham, looked closely, was in fact what he's claimed to be, immediately and completely obedient to commands. But in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, he was not commanded to anything. He was kind of invited into a discussion about what we should do about Sodom and Gomorrah. And so he participates in a discussion. And to some extent, that does soften the conflict.
I think that you're speaking about the openness to commands, and I mean, I really, again, mitzvah, and then it's, I mean, what is the big term for the people of Israel? A lot of times is naseh v'nishma. We do, and then we hear, right? So, I mean, that sense of I'm not even, and the paradox or koan for me is that, I
What's
mean,
the name of it?
Right.
the naseh v'nishma. So I mean, the paradox for me is that the Jews are known for doing before they even hear or comprehend. It seems to me that that phrase "Nase v'nishma" means that, and you're saying Abraham does that. And the question is, this is the people of the book where the book can contain the horrible things, and you don't do them. So, I mean, that to me is another level of this koan. Is like, I mean, we see all these horrible things that are spoken, and we don't do them, but we hold them with respect and love. So.
I think that it's interesting that Abraham spent several verses arguing, advocating for the survival of the people of the two cities, but yet he spent not one word arguing on behalf of the life of his beloved son.
Wow.
And because, for one thing, I was reading commentary in my time at the bottom that in those cultures, the children were belonging to God. Let me see if I can really quickly find that. One second. Just give me. I'll come back to you in a second, okay? And I'll find that.
Okay, well,
Another,
Susan commented to me while we were studying this that we criticized the hell out of Noah for not appearing or saying anything that made it appear like he cared for anybody outside his family. And yet we're all trying to find ways to praise Abraham for
doing the same
sacrificing a
thing.
member of his family.
And doing the same thing, just listening, just doing what God demanded or commanded.
Yeah, I mean, Noah, I mean, really starts as, I mean, he really starts as Hatadik and ends, we talked about this last week, and he's ending as Ha'adam. And that's, but it's a choice of his to be uncovered and then to be, so, I mean, he lowers himself in that and to condemn his sons. And there's that terrible, terrible curse at that point.
Yeah.
Well, also in this Torah portion is the story of Lot and his wife. And being a mom, I can't imagine leaving my family behind and not looking back. It's just, of course she looked back.
Yes, it's kind of like, of course she took an apple down from the tree. Or he did.
At any rate,
I think
it's
that's what
just
teenagers do.
but I guess that, one of the, like David said, that part of the difference is between being commanded and being invited to discuss.
Yeah. And it's really hard for us to take this book or series of books, major theme being when commanded, do or die. Stop being a human. Stop thinking. Stop caring. It's tough.
Yet our Torah is mostly God handing down laws by which we should live by. And there's you have found it, Jay?
Not yet. It's funny. It's right in these 3 pages. I'm getting there.
Okay. And there's the famous story about somebody brought it up last time, I think, about the rabbi declaring that the oven was kosher, and everybody else saying it wasn't. And he goes, well, if the oven's kosher, let the tree be uprooted and fly through the air for 30 feet or whatever it was, and let the water flow backwards. And finally, the rabbis said, no, we're all against you. That's not how we make decisions, not by rivers flowing backwards or for trees being uprooted or whatever. And when the angel reported to God and said, what do you think? And he said, my children have defeated me. And he laughed. It was like we had taken the laws that he had handed down, and now we could use them without God telling us how.
Which is adulthood.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Well, the treatment of women is just one thing after another in this Torah portion. Pimping Sarah, the daughters of Lot, who are left nameless and seemingly condemned after being treated or threatened with horrific treatment.
You mean the one?
Lot's daughters. Lot's daughters, who he offered
Oh,
to
he
his,
offered.
offered
Yeah,
to
he
the
offered
mob.
to the mob rather than the angels.
And then when when Lot, who comes across extremely cowardly, runs into the hills into a cave, which he refused to do the first time. And apparently his daughters aren't aware that Abraham and his family have survived this end of the world scenario, want to continue human life and are the mothers of two nations. And yet those two nations are insulted, are demeaned by the accusation that they're descendants of incestuous relationships. I mean, that's kind of seems to be the point of the story, is our two neighbors, Moab and Ammon, were mothered by incestuous rape.
That's no comment.
Well, I mean,
Well, you guys haven't heard my family story, so it's kind of not as bad as you might think.
But I mean, but it's like this to me is why Freud is part of the response to Judaism in order to deal with these unspeakable things that people are still struggling with. And also note that to differentiate here, this was not perpetuated directly by Lot upon his daughters, but rather fully by their volition upon him. That's another whole way of telling that story. And
Yeah.
so just
they are agents. They're able to create nations that otherwise.
yeah, and those did seem, I don't know if they were evil people. They were, I think, fairly blessed nations they describe them as. So it's a
And Ammon is still there,
strange.
right next to Israel. And I think it'd be a good topic for a Yetzer or Drash. How the evil impulses may be needed,
That's the question.
used wisely.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, and hearing you're reflecting upon the duality. I mean, my sense usually is that that the Torah is going to hold the duality of good and evil, and maybe that's part of this is that. But I myself is participating in this attempt to try to remain human, perhaps one-sidedly good in this. I mean, and preferring to see that human beings have the weight of the goodness more, I suppose, in the sense of Job, which could kind of be suggestive of something that God is learning from us. That in some way, that's I mean that there's a good enough goodness in this small goodness of people. I mean, because these other great things, great good and great evil, I don't. Yeah, it gets too great. But the goodness of Judaism seems to be in having a conversation, a human conversation about impossible things, unthinkable things.
Well, that's why the language is only there as a words on a page to make us think about the unthinkable and what if. That's the name of my synagogue. What if? So it just one thing I had found is that in ancient civilizations, your kin, your children, not just in the Hebraic, but basically a child was literally a child of God, and God called the shots. That was one of the views. God will call the shots of the child. So I just this is one thing about the testing of Abraham. By the way, it's interesting that he planted that tamarisk tree. It's I have experience because I had a second residence in the Coachella Valley, and the tamarisks are brought in from the Middle East and Africa. And what happens is they're the ones you see lined up all along the railroad tracks. And they are unstoppable. Their roots will go down whatever it takes to find water underneath. And if you chop it down, it's going to sprout up 500 feet to the west or east or the north. There's basically no eradicating them. That's a very virulent species. Okay, the narrative. I'm reading from the Torah Union Rabbinical Assembly, United Synagogue of America. That's my. This is what it says. The narrative of the binding and near sacrifice of Isaac, the Akedah, is an unforgettably harrowing story that defies easy interpretation. God commands Abraham to sacrifice the child born to him after so many years of longing. Is this a test of Abraham's faith and readiness to obey, as the opening verse suggests? Is it a protest against the widely observed ancient practice of sacrificing firstborn children as the firstborn of flocks were sacrificed? Is it to teach us that for the believer, the voice of God must override the voice of human conscience? What Kierkegaard called the teleological suspension of the ethical. The medieval philosopher Joseph Albo taught that God, who knew how Abraham would respond, wanted Abraham to discover the great depth of his faith. The reward for potential good deeds is less than the reward for actual good deeds. So in many primitive societies, an adolescent boy on the verge of outgrowing childhood is taken away from the company of women and made to undergo a life-threatening experience, which sometimes included a simulated death. Afterwards, he is welcomed into the company of adult males and initiated into the lore of the tribe. The Akedah was recalled from another perspective by persecuted Jews of later generations. You want me to go on? It says, Shalom Spiegel has written, in the light of the historical reality of the 2nd century persecution of the Roman Empire, so that would have been what, the year 100? 2nd century, yeah, okay. It seemed almost as though something of the splendor and awe of the biblical Akedah story was diminished. Who cares about some ancient far-off time, which is merely thought of as possible sacrifice on the altar, but who was delivered from danger, whom no misfortune overtook, when right before your eyes in your immediate presence, fathers and sons en masse ascend the executioner's block to be butchered and burned, literally butchered and burned. Many medieval Jewish communities suffering persecution saw themselves as reenacting the drama of the Akedah without the redemptive ending. Wow. So thank goodness for that animal caught in the thicket, or we wouldn't be here. You know, he looked up and he saw it.
However, God had told Abraham 3 or 4 times prior to telling him to sacrifice Isaac that through Abraham, through Isaac, he was going to make unto him a great nation, more than the stars in the sky, more than the sands of the earth. So,
And a blessing to the other
so are
nations.
you going to believe me when I said that? Go sacrifice your son and see.
Well, I want to thank everybody for expanding my heart. And Rabbi Moskowitz will be back next week. And God bless you all, if there is a God. If there isn't a God, then my heart blesses all of you. And if there is a God, my heart blesses all of you.
Amen.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.